Okay, guys. I thought I was just working at some stuff here. Looks like it's a little bit so much out. Just gonna do that. A subtle change. Okay, I don't know how many of you are going to join me on this live stream today. We're inside of the shop slash classroom, which is where I'm running the clinic from. On Sunday that I just put up a video about today to talk about or remind people about that the deadline to sign up is pretty soon, pretty quick. A few days left. So it's come along really well. A lot of people have signed up. It's pretty awesome. But right now I want to talk about headgear. I got the topic has come up recently a reasonable amount. Just move my stool forward a little because I know the live stream usually isn't quite as clear as my normal stream of videos because obviously it's a cell phone and it's live stream. So the topic I talk about a lot, and I was just doing a lesson yesterday or the day before. I can't remember now, but the topic was headgear, like the headstalls, headgear, bits, halters. Let's see, hackamores, bitless bridles. You know, everything that you put on a horse's head to control them. And so the topic, and it's quite a long conversation, and I thought I would talk about it here, just in case anybody has any questions while I talk about it. I know you guys, a lot of you post questions later, and I try my best to get back to them. But there's something to be said for having a live discussion. If anybody's interested, I can hopefully see the comments if they come up, and I'll be able to respond. But it's a big topic because there's a lot of emphasis on what you put on your horse's face in the horse world. And I was demonstrating with Luke, and I'll do a proper, or I'll try to do pretty soon. The weather's really, really poor this today and probably tomorrow. But come Friday and the weekend, actually the weekend's super busy. We'll see what happens. But I'll see if I can get a proper video up talking about why I think that headgear is one of the least important things to think about with the idea of controlling your horse. And a lot of people like to do things called liberty, where you do liberty training or liberty work with a horse, where they go along with you without you having to make them through whatever. Essentially, what you're going to be starting with when controlling a horse is a halter and a lead rope. And this is just this is my basic halter with a basic rope lead. In the middle, it's tied, so there's no metal, no buckles, no pieces on here that will hang against the horse's jaw or mouth or something. Somebody said they can't hear. Can everybody else hear? Hopefully you can. Sorry, Tammy. I don't know. Let me turn off the. There's a little heater in here that might be affecting things. I don't know if that'll help. If the microphone is on that, or as if it's affecting the microphone, or actually what the problem probably is that the microphone and speaker and the ports on my phone usually get pretty plugged up with dust and hay, and so anyhow, I don't know. Hopefully. What's that? Somebody says they can hear. Teresa, you can hear. Oh, good. Okay, so it could be your speakers. So anyhow, so you're starting with a halter, and in this case I have a rope halter. So rope halter, I like the idea that there's no metal on this thing. You don't have to, but you never know when a horse is going to sort of jostle around and cause some trouble, or you got to move the rope a little bit. And I think that any added discomfort that I have to add to any training process is a little bit of a step backwards to where I want to be, and I would like to be able to get away from that as best as possible. Um, so for me, it makes sense. It's just all rope. It's good. It's soft, but at the same time, it's very firm, and a rule should be abided by that you never leave a rope. Definitely never leave a rope halter on a horse, because it doesn't break. It never ever breaks. This thing will stay on forever unless you cut it off or take it off. Whereas the nylon ones or the leather ones especially will rot and break off. Nylon ones are pretty powerful too, and some of the leather ones take a long time to rot if left on. Um, Hello Nancy, I'm glad you made it. So, um, so it always starts with a rope halter. You're leading them around, and in my opinion, you can actually ride a horse just fine in a rope halter. But it does bring. There's another statement about um, riding in a rope halter that it can actually end up being not kind to the horse. So talking about controlling a horse and what you put on his head, I think halters are great, and if used correctly when riding as well, and um, the horse understands what you're asking for, how you're asking for it, then it can be great. It can be very kind. But in some cases, it can be unkind, and I agree with that statement. Um, and the caveat, or the key to making sure that something as simple as a rope halter is effective and kind and doesn't have them pushing or bracing against it, is that when you ask for things, primarily turns and stops, that the horse gets the response with good timing. If not, they do. It's true. Horses will end up bracing, they will end up pulling, they will end up fighting something as simple as just a soft, kind, what appears to be kind rope halter, when in fact you then end up teaching them the wrong thing. Um, so that's a hard thing to explain without, maybe it's a hard thing to explain without giving an example in person. Weather's kind of crappy right now, but I wanted to start this discussion off because I am going to go into it further as we do more horse training videos. Um, but it starts off with a halter. So if you've got a halter and you're leading and you're doing your stuff, that's great. Moving on for control. Okay. So when a rope halter starts being ineffective and you're of the mind that you'd like to not uh, uh, use a bit, which is fine. It's not an uncommon feeling. I feel it. I'm not a big fan of bits because I've never so far had a horse respond better to me with a bit than I have with anything else that I've used, which is a halter. And in the cases that a halter doesn't work because the horse sort of fights it, I will move up a little bit, um, and the effect that I'll have, unfortunately, because something went wrong along the way. For example, Luke is a good example. He teaches a lot of kids, and of course, kids have poor timing. So when they pull on him and he responds, as I've shown in a video before, where we get just that little bit of response, well, they need to release. And when they don't, Luke starts thinking, I should fight this. And so because it's just a rope halter, it doesn't have a stronger effect on him. He'll happily fight that and he'll get away with it. And then pretty soon I got to come back in and ask him to start responding in a nicer way. So when you have to move up, if you're thinking you'd like to stay away from a bit, the options are a few. There's a few good options, in my opinion. The first one is what I would call it's a bitless bridle. So there's different kinds of these out there. There's plastic ones, rubber ones, kind of thing, like those all-weather ones. There's rope ones. There's these leather ones. I like this one because it's a bit stylish. You know, it's got the rings for putting on reins. Um, it looks kind of nice. There's the nose band part is a pretty pliable rawhide. It's not a hard, rough, but it's got a bit of roughness to it. This is probably the next thing that I would consider going to, even though it's not much different rope halter. Um, you can attach the reins to a more logical spot in comparison to a rope halter if you were riding in one, because it's on the very sides, more or less where traditional um, headstalls with a bit would come, and the reins would attach to each side of the bit. This is sort of the same thing because you're then pulling this way or this way on the nose. Once you have the nose, then you have the direction. Um, so that's kind of the next thing. Rawhide is kind of rough, you know, on their nose here. You can usually get a little bit more response if you needed to. And also this provides firmer direction. But I've actually stopped using this more and more lately. And before I get into what I do use, we'll talk about a regular headstall. And this is more of a Western style, not an English style. Keeping that in mind. It's all just about the same. This is an O-ring or not, I don't know if they call it an O-ring or a circle or whatever, but not a D-ring. I think D-ring snaffles are great. This is just a typical snaffle. And then you attach the rings onto the sides, and so you're pulling from each side. Typical. Now again, to each his own, and I'm not here to comment specifically on using bits, not using bits. I personally, as I've said, have had more success and a lighter, more effective set of hands without a bit. Could be just fluke, who knows, you know? But most of the horses I found have seemed to be more comfortable. So this is mostly, I use this for demonstration purposes. I'm doing right now here in the live video. Now what I do like to use, once a horse has become pretty good with riding, I wouldn't use this from the get-go. I wouldn't use this to train a horse from the beginning to start a horse. For example, Gracie here is going to be starting soon. And I know that's kind of exciting. It might be news to you guys. I don't know if I've said anything, but she's already starting her start process. And I wouldn't work with what I'm going to show you. I wouldn't work with it originally. Just a second here. We've got, there we go. Okay. Sorry, every once in a while, somebody will come in with a comment that it just gets in the way. Good conversation. Spammers. Anyhow, so what I would do with a horse in the beginning for training personally, and like I said, a lot of people are different. I would just start off in a halter because, in my opinion, controlling a horse starts with a halter. That's why we halter train them. That's why from very young age we make sure that they can handle having a halter on, because it's very hard to do liberty with a horse that is most likely not interested in hanging around with you. So we start out with a halter. Now, when I start to ride, I'll do a one rein halter riding, and I'll move up to two reins because some horses find it very difficult to manage stuff on both sides. So if you're pulling on both sides, it might be a bit difficult, but you quickly evolve. And then once the halter breaking or acclimating process has come along nicely for leading, you're on the ground, you do your groundwork, that is solid, which I've talked about too many times. Um, then it's off to riding, you get under that. And then when ride, I like, now, I left this out in the rain, unfortunately. So it's a little more pliable, which is actually probably kind of nice because I sort of wanted to shape this a bit. I think YouTube crashed on me. Sorry about that. Not my fault. Um, the what I like to use is a hackamore, and this is what I refer to as a real hackamore. I know there are other hackamores out there with the big fluffy noses and stuff. Those are fine. Those are fine. I'm not saying no, but what I'm saying is that what I like to use personally is a bosal or bozal, how you want to uh, say the word, which comes with the hanger. Okay, and then on that is the Macadie. Okay, so the Macadie is just, it's actually one long rope, and you get to decide how long your reins are, which is a loop. So you choose how long your reins are, and the bonus is you get a lead rope with it. So to me, this comes closest to what I naturally ride in with a halter, because I'll just attach a set of reins. Oh, lucky I happen to have a set of reins here, but I'll just take my loop reins. I don't like split reins. I don't know why people like split reins. I can't stand them. They drive me nuts. So I use loop reins all the time. And then they just have these little dealio clips that clip on anything. So I'll use that with a halter. And then because I'm using my halter, I have a lead rope to go with it. So the hackamore setup mimics that close. And I like that it's pretty minimal. You essentially put this on the nose, put this over the head, and you're ready to go. Putting your reins over top first, and then you just lead off with your lead rope. Now you don't have to have a little leather bit on the end. This one happened to come with it. I have another set, I think, that doesn't. But I like this a lot for controlling the horse while riding. Generally, the rawhide is a little squishy at the moment because it's all wet. And it's bleeding color a little. But I like it a lot because when it sits on their nose, it sits and it stays. When you go to turn, the point of turning comes straight from this bottom part here. And so essentially it'll do this, and it'll do this. I don't know if you can see that. It does that, and it rotates, which is different than a halter, which is different than a side pull. So you essentially have to just acclimate them a little bit more to that, which is where your groundwork comes in handy, because usually you can build on what your groundwork has already taught them, because you've acclimated them to the idea that when you're riding, you put your hand out and they should turn that way. You put your hand out the other way, they turn that way. From there you build. So headgear, controlling a horse, to me it shouldn't really matter. To me you should be able to put anything on. I've said before, you should be able to ride a horse in a piece of string if you really wanted to. Mainly because your hands should be secondary to how you control them anyways, which is going back to my original statement in this video, which some of you may not have heard because you came in midway, But I find headgear um, a secondary topic to controlling horses because a lot of it should come from your body, from sort of a feel and where your body is. So when we do our groundwork, when we lead our arm out, their nose should go and they should move, they should drive. So the drive comes from your body or your legs when you're riding. On the ground, you might sort of shake the rope a little. You might have you might have the end of your rope a little here, and you might just shake it in the air or sort of slap it against your leg, or actually make it whistle. Worst case scenario, you have to tap them with it. Hopefully you don't. It's all drive, but the direction should come from the feel. So headgear, while pretty and good looking and part of the culture of horse riding, which I completely respect, um, it should be secondary to riding and controlling the horse, um, just due to the fact that it's almost a little bit, I don't know, put it another way, it's almost elementary. When you want to get into more advanced stuff, your hands will be doing other things. It shouldn't be for controlling stop and direction. So headgear, while important, um, it should be a secondary topic because control of the horse should not come from having to control their head. In fact, the demonstration that I gave that day was on Luke, which I will try. I think I've done. Maybe I've done. Hopefully, I have a video somewhere. But essentially, um, the demonstration was that I don't control Luke with my hands. I put the reins down, and my control of him while I go around the arena and I weave in between the barrels and the cones and the bridge and all of the obstructions that you guys have seen me build and put into the arena and try out with the horses, the noodles and stuff. The control that I have is with my body, with my legs and my body, so that my hands are free to do other things if I need them. The other thing that it sort of teaches, that I think that I really hope that my own students can pick up, is that if you rely less on your hands, you won't try to balance with them. You won't try to pull on the horse, um, to keep balance when your horse starts to kind of cruise off, or takes a little jump or something like that. You'll be thinking less than that, and you'll be more acclimated to using your body and your legs to keep your balance. So hopefully that makes sense. I mean, I know it's kind of been a bit of a monologue. Let's see what we got here for questions. Let's see. Chrissy. Hello, Chrissy. You have a hello, Angie from Ohio. Nancy uses a rope halter. Very good. Yeah, real rope halters are great. They're if they're on tight, if they're on firm enough, then you can get a really good response, because there's no lag time. It's just on there, snug, and a light hand will do a lot of work. Okay, let's see. Ohio. Hello, Angie. Oh, yeah, Chrissy. I think using really hard hands hurts a horse no matter what you use. Release is important. I 100% agree. The biggest, one of the biggest things I teach is probably about 5 lessons, 5 key points to horses that I try to teach. And one of those is that it's never, it's, I'd say, 99% of the time, it's not the pressure that is teaching the horse. Probably 100%. It's not the pressure that's teaching the horse. Hard hands, being rough, fighting with them, doesn't teach them. In fact, you can teach them to fight harder by maintaining firm, hard, or rough hands. It's actually the release that teaches. And so if you need to have a little argument, or a discussion or a fight to get something done, and they do it, or they come this close to doing it maybe, or you've got the first step of that, release, build on that. So yes, hard hands and stuff uh, make for a hard horse. Nancy says, my mare hates a bit, but since I'm fairly new to the equine, I was told to use a snaffle bit. Would love to not using a bit. Um, I get a lot of questions from newer people that kind of come about and they say, well, how do I get away from using a bit? Everybody tells me I should use a bit. Um, if you don't lead your horse, if you don't guide your horse, if you don't do groundwork with your horse in a bit, then you should be able to ride in whatever you're doing your groundwork and leading with. If you can't, then I always recommend people to go back to doing the groundwork until you get everything that you want to get in the saddle. If you get everything on the ground in whatever you want to use, you should be able to get in the saddle. Start slow, take it easy, get everything you want slowly but surely. And when you get that, when you get those little bits and pieces, you just keep building up and up and up. So if you have trouble at a trot, check it out at a walk. Make sure it's really accurate in whatever headstall you want to use. And in fact, proof of it is that there are many people out there that ride with nothing, just a rope around the neck. So it can be done. Have faith. Don't trust people that say you have to use one thing. What about, Angie says, what about an emergency situation for a one rein stop? Will it work? Yes, actually. One rein stops, you'll be doing that on the ground anyways. I mean, not if you have nothing on. But if you have a halter with a lead rope or a side pull with your reins or your hackamore with your loop reins, all of this stuff, all of these things can be, you can replicate your one rein stop on the ground to where the angle that you pull the rein in should translate exactly to, in their brains, stop the front end, move the back end. So yeah, absolutely. All of these are completely effective. And these are things that you'll practice while you're just walking around. So you'll walk around a little bit and and you'll let one rein loose, of course, right? And you'll bring your other rein in, towards your hip. If you've got the nose right, you get the nose right, you bring the hip. They should just one rein stop. So whether you're going crazy or you're just walking slowly or doing a trot, one rein stop should apply no matter what. You should be able to do it without trouble. So anyhow, so I wanted to just cover that. Head stalls, controlling a horse with what is on their head. Does it have to be a bit? Do you have to have a leverage bit? Can you just use a rope halter? Can you use a normal halter, like a nylon or leather one? I think yes. Nylon and leather ones tend to not fit as precisely as a rope one, but every circumstance is a little different. It might. I'm a huge proponent of Bozels. I think they're great. I think they look good. They're mostly comfortable for the horse as long as they fit. Make sure that they fit properly on their mouth, on their nose. Personally, actually, when I bought this, I thought it was great, but I've since changed my opinion on how thick it is. I would prefer to have a much thinner, lighter one. But weirdly enough, the thinner and lighter ones are more expensive. So, I don't know. You work with what you've got. Chrissy says a leverage bit may pull the horse over with one rein stop. Leverage bits get leverage for a reason. I struggle with leverage bits myself, looking at them, watching them, because they look like they really hurt. They look like you have to lever against something. So usually the bit is in the mouth, and then there's a curb chain or a strap or something like that that is leveraged against, or there's a whole piece that goes around the nose, and then the lever is based on a point on that strap and the bit inside, so that when you pull, when the point of contact with the horse is here, but you're pulling somewhere down here, um, and then you end up sort of doing that, and you have a, a ratio of pounds of pressure here that translates to here, and you end up sort of just doing this, and it drives up here and drives down here. So I have a lot of trouble with a lot of the leverage bits in my own mind. Um, Somebody asked what we're talking about. We're talking about controlling horses and headstalls and gear that we can use or do use. My own thoughts on how that works. So, but yeah, leverage bits, I agree, can definitely cause a horse to sort of lean into something rather than um, having them naturally sort of turn their nose a little bit to get what you want. So if you're turning, you're going to have the nose go, unless you're doing some odd other. There are other odd maneuvers that you can have horses do reverse flexion on, but without getting into that, just normal riding. Um, the nose is going to be turning into the turn. Now it doesn't mean if some horses will actually have their nose straight or out of the turn and they'll lean in like this. Very, very poor habit. You want to try to get them away from that because they are leaning and fighting the pressure that you're sort of placing to have that nose come over naturally and then have the horse follow their nose rather than fall into. It's really scientific. It's hard to get into exactly here, but if you are levering and you're kind of pulling and they're hurting, and they might kind of do that, if you're going like that. So instead of doing this, they're doing that because they're trying to get out of the pressure of the leverage. So who was that? Chrissy? Sorry, I've forgotten already. Chrissy, yes. So I agree with you that in some cases a leverage bit can absolutely cause a horse to um, pull away or lean incorrectly over that way. Okay, I've never used one, but I've seen person pulls too hard, it pulls the horse because of the leverages. Yeah, they're very powerful. If you think about how a lever works, if you take something kind of long like this, and if we were to lever here, it's no different than it's teaching the kids a science uh, thing concept, and the idea was where what's called the fulcrum. And so if you've got a lever of some sorts, wherever it's, I'm just balancing this for display. It's the fulcrum, right? So if I pull on here, I mean, right now it's very well balanced. But if I have a long lever over here and the fulcrum is here, the amount of power that I apply that will affect here is very powerful. Enough so that, a 50-pound child with a long enough lever can lift a vehicle. So when we get into these long shank levers, some of them will be, say, that long. Some are shorter, but you're still going to have wherever the fulcrum is. If the fulcrum is here, the reins are connected here, and the bit is here, for example, you get a lot of power. And there's a scientific equation for the amount of power that you get here to the amount of power you use here. And the amount of power that's required here to fight this power, which is obviously why leverage bits are created, because it allows more control over an animal that is fighting. Essentially, what can start if you train with something, what some people refer to as too soft. So there are concepts out there where you train with something hard and come down to something soft. I'm the opposite. I start with the softest that I can do and hopefully maintain it. If I have to move up a little, I'm hoping to move back down as fast as possible, because I don't want to have to keep going up. And I don't want to start hard to get to soft. I want to see if I can just have soft. So that's another topic. But control over the horse doesn't start with headstalls and reins and stuff like that. So in conclusion, I would say, it should be secondary. There should be um, the thought that there are other aids and other ways to have directional and gait change, usually down, outside of using something that in the end obviously causes some form of pain. We want to get away from that. It absolutely 100% makes for a better relationship. And I can speak from experience. So anybody that wants to question that, I'm more than happy to step up to the line and say, let's talk about it. But 100%, I can see that less pain involved in working with these horses yields far better results, far better. And I'm not saying something does cause, but us with our hands and our judgment can cause that. So, anyways, hopefully that's been interesting. It's been a long one, I think half hour or so. Kind of hungry. I kind of want lunch. And the other thing about leverage bits, actually, Chrissy, you reminded me, is that leverage bits make it difficult to figure out how much power you're putting behind your pull because it's a lever. So you feel like it's just a tiny bit, right? We go back to the lever thing again. Here, I might put just a tiny bit of pressure here. It might be very small, but here it's 5 times that. And that's hard. That's not easy. You'd have to be the ultimate expert, in my opinion, to really grasp that it's not a 1-to-1. Personally, I like a 1-to-1 ratio, so I don't use a lever at all. If I can, if I'm given the option when riding. So whatever, teach his own. That's what I find effective. If you guys follow that, cool. If not, it's okay. If you want to talk about it, happy to talk about it. But I thought I'd get that out because it's been a discussion the last week or so, and I did a pretty big demonstration on how I felt and showed is an effective way to get control of a horse, irrespective of the headgear used. So there you go. Any questions? I'll give you guys 2 minutes, and then I'm going to get lunch. Unless there's a lot of questions, then I'll answer them. But what you're looking at in the background is a rock wall. My daughter's, she loves rock climbing, so I built a little rock wall. Anyways, I think we're at a minute and a half left. You guys are pretty quiet. It's cool. I'm okay with that. Now I got to clean up. So I think that covers it. I'm definitely going to try to do some examples, some good visual reference that you guys can show, or I can show the theory to you to understand where I'm coming from, why I do this kind of stuff, how it makes sense to me, and how it makes sense to a lot of people that I follow. Thanks, Nancy. I will have a good lunch in just another minute. But yeah, these aren't new concepts. I'm not selling something brand new. I'm not coming up with a new idea. This is something that a lot of people out there follow. I just happen to be another one of those proponents, which I also get a lot of comments on how people feel that they don't feel encouraged because there's so many people out there doing other stuff that they feel isn't very nice to the horse, isn't very kind to the horse, and they show up and they feel a little bit encouraged that somebody is trying to promote this. I'm not alone. I'm slowly becoming more and more of a majority, I would call it. I see less and less promotion of older techniques outside of cultural activities like reining and cutting and classical dressage and stuff like that. But even those crews, those crowds of people, within them, there are people that are trying to do different stuff. And it's great, have as many tools in your tool set as you can. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no reason to limit yourself. So, just keep trying, keep at it. know that there is a way to get to where you want to get if this is what you want to do. I promise you, it works. It's worked on every horse that I've come across. So, anyhow, any more comments? Let's see. Click. Angie, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Nancy, for that compliment that you like my horsemanship. I like it too. And I'm constantly evolving too. So I want to say that as well. For everybody that's come to learn, you go other places to learn and you do your clinics and you do your thing. It is a lifelong practice and you just keep evolving and getting better. You know, that's the cool thing about it. And the horses teach us the most. So looks like the rain has slowed down. I'm gonna go grab some lunch, you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow. At least I hope so. Should be.